People don't talk about what it really means to have a strong mind. Not the motivational poster kind of strong, not the get up at 5 a.m. and drink green smoothies kind. I'm talking about the kind of strength that makes people pause mid-sentence when they're speaking to you. The kind that makes them question whether they're ready to be in your presence. The kind of strength that doesn't yell or flex, but unsettles. I didn't build that kind of mind because I wanted to. I built it because I didn't have a choice. It started when I was 17. I remember the exact moment. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, knees pressed together, palms digging into my thighs like I could anchor myself through pain. There was a quiet in my house that wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence you learn to fear, where sound feels like a mistake and breathing too loudly makes you a target. My father had just finished one of his lectures. That's what he called them, as if breaking someone down word by word until they forget who they are could be educational. He'd look me in the eye and speak like he was reading a script he'd rehearsed 1,000 times. You'll never be enough. You're soft. The world's going to eat you alive, and I won't be there to save you. No one will. You hear something like that often enough, and it becomes a part of you, a shadow that walks with you. At first, I tried to fight it. I'd shout back, slam doors, write angsty poems in a journal I thought he'd never find. But one day, I stopped fighting, not out of defeat, but out of something deeper, something colder. I realized if I kept reacting the way he wanted, I'd keep playing the role he wrote for me. So I decided to change the story. I remember looking at my reflection and thinking, what if I just stopped letting people into my head? What if I made it so no one, not even him, could reach me unless I allowed it? That's the first time I tasted real mental strength, not power, discipline. Quiet, patient, terrifying discipline. At first it looked like withdrawal. I stopped reacting, stopped flinching, stopped asking for comfort. I turned inward, not as escape, but as training. I'd wake up early just to sit with my thoughts before anyone could interrupt them. I didn't even have a name for what I was doing, but I knew it mattered. I started journaling, not to vent, but to analyze. Why did that make me angry? Where did that fear come from? What part of that interaction was under my control? I dissected my own mind like a surgeon, and slowly something shifted. People started noticing. Teachers said I was mature for my age. Friends said I had this calming energy. But what they didn't see was that behind the calm, there was fire, not rage, resolve. By the time I was 20, I could walk into a room full of strangers and feel completely centered. Not because I was confident, but because I didn't need anything from anyone. That's the real secret, isn't it? When your self-worth becomes untouchable, people feel it. But here's the part no one tells you. Building a strong mind doesn't just attract people, it repels them too. You stop being relatable, your silence unnerves them. Your lack of reactivity gets misinterpreted as arrogance. When you don't flinch at criticism, it's not humility they see, it's threat. Because people rely on your emotional responses to gauge their own power. And when they can't read you, they get scared. I had a friend, let's call him Daniel. We met in college. He was loud, charismatic, the kind of person who thrived on attention. We got along well at first, but over time, he started saying things like, "Man, it's hard to know what you're thinking," or "Do you even get nervous?" At first, it was teasing, then it became resentment. One day, he told me flat out, "You act like nothing touches you, like you're better than the rest of us." I didn't argue, because honestly, what was there to say? I just spent years learning to master my emotions, to move with intention instead of impulse, and he saw it as ego. That's when I realized a strong mind is a mirror. It reflects people back at themselves, and some don't like what they see. But here's what I've learned. When you build a mind so strong it scares people, you also attract the ones who are ready, the ones who aren't intimidated by your stillness, but drawn to it, the ones who don't need to fix you or compete with you. They just want to learn. You begin to have quieter relationships, but deeper ones, conversations that don't exhaust you, arguments that don't erupt because you've trained yourself to listen instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. Your boundaries become invisible fences, clear, unbreakable, yet respectful. But there's another side to this story, a darker one, because sometimes when your mind becomes your fortress, you forget how to let people in. You build walls so high that even love starts to echo. You hear it, but it doesn't touch you. I met someone once, someone who saw through the armor. Let's call her Ava. She had this wildness to her, this emotional honesty I found both beautiful and threatening. She'd say things like, "You think too much," or "You're not made of stone, you just pretend to be." And I'd smile, deflect, redirect the conversation. But one night, she looked at me and said, "You know what's terrifying about you? You never break, and I think part of you wants to." I didn't respond. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. It's strange. You spend years strengthening your mind, learning to regulate, to control, to detach, and then one person says something that cracks it all open. I started asking myself, have I gone too far? Is it possible to become so mentally strong that you stop feeling? The answer, I think, is yes. But the solution isn't to weaken, it's to soften. To remember that real strength isn't about invulnerability, it's about discernment, about knowing when to be steel and when to be skin. So I started unlearning a few things, not the discipline, not the boundaries, but the fear of vulnerability. I started letting myself cry when something moved me, letting myself need people, letting myself admit that sometimes I don't have it all figured out. And you know what? That scared people more, because there's nothing more powerful than someone who's unshakable and emotionally available, someone who can hold your pain without absorbing it, who can listen without reacting, who can love without losing themselves. That's the mind I strive to build now. It's not perfect. Some days I fall back into old patterns, overanalyzing, over-controlling, over-protecting, but I catch it quicker now. I remind myself that strength isn't a destination, it's a practice. It's in the small decisions, choosing not to spiral when things go wrong, choosing to stay calm in chaos, choosing to listen even when your ego wants to speak, choosing to pause instead of react, choosing to feel even when it's easier not to, and maybe most of all, choosing to remain open to life, to people, to uncertainty. Because in the end, building a mind so strong it scares people isn't about intimidation. It's about presence. It's about walking into a room and not needing to prove a thing, about holding space for discomfort without flinching, about being the calm in someone else's storm, not because you're trying to be a hero, but because you've weathered your own. I still think about my father sometimes. He hasn't changed much, but I have. And the irony is, he was right about one thing: the world will try to eat you alive, but he was wrong about how to survive it. You don't survive by becoming crueler than the world, you survive by becoming wiser than it, more intentional, less reactive. You survive by knowing who you are so deeply, no one can convince you otherwise, not even the voices in your own head. That's what a strong mind is, not a shield, but a lens, one that filters chaos, but still lets in light. So if you're watching this, wondering if it's possible to build a mind like that, yes, it is. But know this, it takes time, it takes stillness, and it takes facing parts of yourself that most people avoid their entire lives. But if you're willing, if you're ready to trade comfort for clarity, noise for depth, reaction for response, then the journey is worth it. And who knows, maybe one day someone will sit across from you, frustrated, confused, maybe even afraid, and they'll ask, "How are you so calm in all this?" And you'll smile, not because it's easy, but because you've earned it. Most people think power comes with noise. They think strength is in the roar, in the declarations, in the visible acts of dominance that demand attention. But real strength, the kind that can move through fire and not be burned, is often completely silent. That's what people don't understand. That silence can be louder than chaos. That composure can be more unsettling than rage. That presence doesn't have to announce itself. It just is. I didn't fully understand this until the night I saw a man get humiliated in front of a room full of people and didn't flinch. We were at a networking event, the kind that always felt like a performance. Small talk and surface-level admiration masked as business interest. And this man, I won't name him, got called out publicly. Someone accused him of dishonesty, made jokes about his past, hinted at failures I could see were raw wounds for him. Everyone around him froze. We all expected something, a defense, anger, maybe even retreat, but he did something else. He simply looked at the accuser, waited for them to finish, then smiled. Not a mocking smile, not even a forgiving one, just a calm recognition. And then he said, "Are you done?" That was it. 4 words. The room shifted. Power doesn't always have to rise. Sometimes it grounds. It makes everyone else realize how unsteady they are by comparison. That night stayed with me, not because of the drama, but because I realized I was looking at a man who had absolutely nothing to prove. He'd already fought the battles we were all terrified of. That's the kind of mind I began to build. Not a weapon, not a shield, but a foundation, something immovable. But the more I built that foundation, the more I had to confront the fractures that were already there. That's the thing about becoming stronger. You can't just layer on confidence and call it growth. You have to go backwards sometimes, back to the origins, back to where the voice inside you first learned to doubt. For me, that voice didn't sound angry. It sounded tired. It whispered, "You're not enough. You'll never catch up. You're too late." I lived with that voice for years, mistaking it for my own. It shaped how I walked into rooms, how I looked at myself in mirrors, how I interpreted silence from others. Everything became a test. Every delay, every rejection, every awkward moment felt like confirmation. See, they're right about you. You don't silence that voice through affirmations. You don't kill it with hustle. You have to do something far harder. You have to listen to it. You have to let it speak. Let it finish its sentence. And then, once it's done, you have to look at it not like an enemy, but like a child, because that voice was born in fear, in scarcity, in abandonment. It doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be reparented. I started doing something strange. Every time I felt that inner voice spike up, I'd ask it, "Whose voice is that really?" And I'd trace it. Back to a teacher who embarrassed me in class. Back to a sibling who used my insecurities as punchlines. Back to an ex who weaponized vulnerability. And suddenly, it wasn't my voice anymore. It was an echo. And once you can name the echo, you can let it go. That's when the mind really begins to clear. When the clutter of other people's opinions, their shame, their projections starts to fall away. And what's left is you, just you. But finding that version of yourself, your core, it's not this sudden flash of clarity. It's gradual. It happens in micro decisions. It's choosing to stay quiet in an argument because you know peace is more important than being right. It's choosing to not chase someone who keeps walking away because you finally realized your value doesn't shrink when others can't see it. It's sitting in solitude, not because you've been left, but because you've chosen your own company over diluted connections. And little by little, that new voice, the true one, starts to speak. At first, it's hesitant because it's been silenced for years. But then it gets bolder. It starts saying things like, "You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You can walk away without burning bridges. You are not what happened to you. You are who you choose to become after." And once that voice takes root, your entire lens changes. You stop seeing mistakes as shameful. You see them as teachers. You stop measuring success by how others respond. You measure it by how aligned you feel. You stop fearing endings because you know beginnings are always tucked inside them. But here's the paradox. The stronger you become, the lonelier it can feel. Not because people don't like strength, but because they're used to shared wounds. They connect through pain, not through power. And when you no longer need fixing, some people don't know what to do with you. They mistake your peace for distance, your clarity for coldness. It hurts sometimes, not being misunderstood, but being outgrown by those who once knew you best, because they remember you in fragments, but you've gathered yourself into a whole. Still, I've learned something deeply comforting. Those who are meant for the evolved version of you will always find you. Not because you chase them, but because stillness has its own kind of gravity. The most aligned connections in my life didn't come when I was loud. They came when I was clear. A friend I hadn't spoken to in years sent me a message recently. She wrote, "I don't know why, but I keep thinking about you lately. I've been going through something, and I remembered how calm you always were, how safe it felt just to sit with you. No advice, no judgment, just stillness." That's when it hit me, that kind of strength. It ripples. It might scare some, but it heals others. You never know who's watching you from afar, not because they admire your success or your charm, but because your presence gives them permission to slow down, to breathe, to become. That's the legacy I want. Not to be remembered as the smartest or the most successful, but as the one who reminded people they could trust themselves again, because that's what real strength is. It's not armor. It's not dominance. It's not the absence of fear. It's the quiet conviction that you can meet fear and not collapse. It's knowing that no matter what life strips from you, title, love, safety, you are not empty, because you've built something within that no one can take. A strong mind doesn't predict the future. It prepares you for it. It lets you sit with sadness without needing to escape. It lets you face failure without branding yourself a failure. It lets you be honest, deeply, uncomfortably honest, about who you are without flinching. And once you have that, you stop fearing the world, because the scariest thing was never the world itself. It was being unprepared for it, unanchored, reactive, at the mercy of it. But when you're grounded, even a storm feels like weather, not a threat. That's what I hope you walk away with. Not a blueprint for mental perfection, but a remembrance, a nudge, a gentle awakening. You don't need to become inhumanly strong. You just need to become unshakably human. And if you do it right, that will scare the right people, and it will inspire the ones who are ready. And slowly, this quiet revolution of minds waking up to their own power, true power, will ripple outward. One honest thought at a time, one brave decision at a time, one healed voice at a time, starting with yours.